Welcome everyone back to the podcast. We have a special guest, which is Nancy Rodriguez. She is an amazing preschool teacher and has an awesome baking business as well. I can't wait for all the tips she's going to have to offer for us. And that's all the listeners that are listening up. She also has a podcast that is super awesome as well. And I'll put it all in the description so you can check out all of Nancy's stuff, her baking business, which is awesome cookies, by the way. I've had some and they are great. And so you're not missing out. But I wanted to ask you, Nancy, how's your day going so far?
Day's going pretty good. I mean, typical teacher stuff going on. But I can't complain.
I hear you. And what made you want to become a preschool teacher?
Well, I've always loved working with children, and I always wanted to be a teacher ever since I was little. I don't know where that came from, but I did. And so I've worked with different ages, and then I thought I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went into the hospital setting and I was working there for a couple of years. And then I said, no, this isn't for me. So then I came back to teaching recently.
Wow, interesting. You said you had a hospital setting. Were you just thinking about, okay, maybe there's another way to serve people through, I guess, the medical industry? Is that why you went into trying out with the hospital and everything?
Yeah, so I actually worked at Children's Hospital, so it was still serving children. And it was pretty much also because my sister, like growing up, had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. So just in and out of there a lot. And of course, I was there. So they gave so much to our family. And ever since then, I was like, I want to be able to make a difference like that in somebody's life. So I actually had the privilege of working at the same hospital that my sister spent so much time in.
Wow. It sounds like you have a very serving heart from the kids, the hospital. Do you have any other ventures that you do where you serve other communities or anything like that?
Yeah, so I've always had a heart for serving too. I think just because I've been blessed with so much. So throughout the years, I've done a lot of things, but something major that I do is my friends had started these trips to Mexico where we serve orphans over there and then people that live by the landfill. And then for different reasons, they weren't able to continue it anymore. So my sister and I pretty much took over that program. So before COVID, we were going every other month and spending time with the orphans and taking clothes, food, toys, all types of donations to the people out there. So we're committed to helping the community in Mexico. And then,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, and then here locally, this sister had offered a volunteer opportunity, and it's with these kids that are at a home. It's of all ages, but they're here temporarily until they can find a placement for them. So again, before COVID, that's something that I was doing also on a weekly basis.
Yeah. What do you feel from just because you and your saying sister took it over and are kind of like leading it? What do you feel was the biggest challenge of taking it over that you felt?
Probably, it all depends on volunteers, right? So if we don't get a lot of donations or people who are even willing to go over there, that makes it difficult because we can only take so much, right? And so I'm so grateful that sometimes we do get an overwhelming amount of donations, but then we come across of how are we going to get all of this over? So it takes a whole Saturday, so it is a commitment for people to go, but it's definitely rewarding. Like, I can't say that there's been any person that's gone and been like, I hate it and I'll never go again. It's definitely rewarding to spend time with the children, and people are so grateful. And for those of us who have been going for years, you build relationships with those people, right? So they're not just strangers anymore that you're serving, and you get to see the children grow. And then you see some of those children, now that they're older, come back and serve the orphans as well. So it's, to me, I'm just like, wow, to be able to just give up a Saturday is nothing compared to what you're doing for these people in their life.
It is definitely a generational serving, like you're saying, because the kids are impacted. And you said down the road, they also want to serve as well. Is this volunteer group within a church, or is it outside? Is it secular?
It can be anybody, of course, because we go to church. Most of our volunteers are from church, but it could be anybody We've had family members, coworkers, people
Mm.
who, heard through other people come as well. So it's open to anyone.
Mm. And would you say, because you're saying you're growing up serving a lot, would you say that's a big, strong foundation for you as like someone in the faith? Is that what kind
Yeah.
of drives you, or like you're wanting to be a Christian?
Yes, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think just having so much help growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing how my life is so much better because of that. And
Mm-hmm.
my parents, telling me like, we need to be grateful for everything that we've given for the people in our lives. And if you can, why not make a
Yeah.
difference in someone else's life? And then, of course, like being a disciple, like that's what we're called to serve, those that are less fortunate than us, and orphans and widows, and I mean, pretty much everyone.
Wow. And what did it for you to be fully committed to God? Like, because we have doubts as Christians sometimes, but what did it for you to be like, okay, I want to commit and serve Him instead of going back to the world?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced a lot in the world, and I know that there's nothing better.
Mm,
And of course, I've gone through seasons. Like last year was probably the worst year of my life,
mm,
and but always reminding myself of that. Like, what am I going back to? Like, there's
mm.
nothing better that I
Yeah.
could say it's worth leaving my friends, my, spiritual family, uh, something that gives me hope and
Mm,
I can feel like I can rely on. There's none of that. And just thinking about like, do I really want to go back to, being at the club every single weekend and
mm,
drinking all the time, and even not having like deep relationships sometimes? Like, I have a few friends that I'm still friends with from back
yeah.
then, but a lot of my friends stopped talking to me once I stopped living that lifestyle.
Crazy.
So, and then when those hard times come, you're like, what happened to all my friends, and they're gone
Yeah.
because you're not this fun person anymore. So I always remind myself of that, like, there's really nothing
Mm,
that is worth it. And my life is so much better
mm.
now that I decided, to give up my life for God. So it's always good to remind myself whenever those tough times come around.
Amen. That's super awesome to hear your story. And you're right. It's like going back to something that isn't as rewarding as you're saying. And I wanted to ask you, for someone that wants to build their faith, what advice would you offer to them?
I would say definitely pray specific prayers. I
Mhm.
think that's also what has helped me, is just either writing it. I remember talking to a friend about this the other day, that I would write, not in detail, but I would write about, certain people I was praying about or certain situations, and then going back and seeing like, wow, like God answered those prayers. Sometimes we go along living life and we don't even realize these things.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we could just kind of like, oh, that was great, and then, keep moving.
Mm,
But praying specific prayers and just seeing how God answers those. And sometimes, it doesn't happen right away, it'll happen
yeah.
afterwards. Or sometimes it's even more than you asked for, and those are even better, because it's like,
Yeah.
wow, like I was asking for something like this and God gave me something major. So, yeah, much better than I could have asked for. And definitely having people in your life. You need to
Mm,
have those people, especially when tough times come, because they're there to encourage you. They're there to remind you of how far you've either come or how you've gone through a different battle pretty much and came out with a victory. And then, of course, to spend good time as well. I love the fact that now I can have such awesome memories
mm,
without having to think of like, did I have some alcohol in order to make that fun
mm,
or anything like that? Like, it's all healthy and wholesome.
mm.
And I've probably had a better life now, just being able to do
Amen.
everything in a different and righteous way.
Wow, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking that when you said write things down, because sometimes like you look back at how much God has done for you, you're just like, whoa, mind blowing. I never expected this. And those are the best. The ones where you're like, whoa, I didn't ask for this, but I'll take it. I'll take it
Yeah.
anyways. And I also thought
Yeah.
of Habakkuk 2:2, where it talks about writing down your vision or just anything down. and look back at it and see if you're working towards it or God's working some way around it to fulfill it. But
Yeah.
there's one thing that caught my attention to earlier. You're saying that last year was your most hardest year. And I was surprised, like,
Mhm.
oh, I thought this year would be hard because of COVID-19 and this
Yeah.
lockdown. But actually, it's been looking pretty good for you because you started your own baking business. Like, what made you be
Mhm.
like, oh, I want to try this out?
For my baking business.
Yeah.
So because I'm a teacher, and of course the children weren't allowed to be in school in the beginning, I wasn't working
Oh, wow.
and I had a lot of free time. And I don't do well with a lot of free time because I like to be, out and about. I like to be doing things. I like to work. And so a lot of things were taken from me, right? Because of all the restrictions that we have. I had to stop teaching. I had
Wow.
to stop volunteering. I love to travel. I couldn't travel anywhere.
Mhm.
So I was just like, okay. And then, I need to make money as well. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do? What can I do? And I've always loved baking. And my brother-in-law actually encouraged me. He's like, hey,
Mhm.
why don't you sell your desserts? Like, they're really good. And he doesn't like sweets, but he'll eat my desserts. I'm like, if it's coming from him, then it must be good. So I was like, okay. And then I just kind of gave it a try. And then, I mean, God definitely blessed that a lot more than I thought because it was more like, we'll see. Like, I didn't really think people would purchase my desserts. And
Yeah.
then now I'm like, wow, just to see like how that's grown and then all the support that I've gotten from different
Mhm.
people. So that's how it all started because of him encouraging me. So I was like, why not? I don't have anything to lose.
It's really cool. And for people that are like say introverted or want to start their own business, what advice would you give them?
I would say, I mean, definitely think first of what it is that you enjoy doing because sometimes we want to think of like what's going to make me money,
Mm,
sometimes like really quick. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're going to get tired and you're
mm,
not going to want to do it and you're not going to put your whole heart into it. So definitely assess what it is that you enjoy doing, your talents. God has given us all different gifts. So assessing that and then
mm,
social media.
mm,
So, social media has its pros and its cons, but it definitely helps to promote whatever it is that you have, your business. So for me, taking pictures and just posting and then people tagging me and then doing their own posts. And so it's a whole chain effect, right? Because then like
yeah,
my, 200 people on my, friends list see that. And then out
mm,
of that, God willing, like I would get a new customer or things like that,
ah,
or just word of mouth. But definitely social media helps a lot
mm,
and especially if you're introverted and or like me, like I feel like I'm a little bit of both, but I call
okay,
myself like a shy extrovert.
okay.
That's challenging, but in social media you don't really have to do too much, but you can
Mm.
reach out to so many people.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, because I definitely seen a lot of people like you're saying. It's like a chain effect, kind of like giving a shout out for your
Hmm.
desserts. And I think that's awesome. That was
Yeah,
really good details there. And like you're saying, as an introvert, we don't necessarily have to. You're gonna put yourself out there on social media, but not necessarily like one-on-one contact as much. You get to save
yeah,
your social battery for the people listening. And
yeah.
I know you're mentioning travel. What were the plans that you have in mind for this year? Before COVID happened.
Oh, it's like so sad to think about it. So when COVID first started, I had spring break for school. So I
Mm,
was supposed to go to Cancun and that didn't
wow.
happen. And then I was supposed to go to the World Summit in
Mm,
Orlando and that didn't happen. And since I'm a teacher, I have the whole summer off. So I was thinking of saving my money and going to Cuba or going to somewhere like in the Bahamas
yeah.
and just like so I was just thinking of all these different places and then for my birthday I wanted to travel somewhere else like somewhere
Mhm.
nice. I love the beach so I wanted to go somewhere where it had nice clear warm water and that didn't
Mhm.
happen so I was just like oh man and I was looking so forward to having especially the summer because
Mhm.
I was like the possibilities are endless if obviously like I've saved up
Yeah.
enough money to do that so but yeah that didn't happen.
Wow. Would you try to do other states? Because I know some states are open for travel.
Yeah. So actually I have. gone to another state. So I did end up going to Florida, not when I thought I was going to go, but I went afterwards. And so a lot of people, will be like, what are you doing? Especially to Florida, like of all places, why would you go there? But I think as long as you take your precautions and everything, and the airport's not very busy, and they're doing a good job as well, I felt like I would feel comfortable traveling again during this time. But of course, it depends on everybody's comfort level.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy. Because I know that at least in Florida, a lot, even amusement parks are open, but like you said, just take the precautions and you should be fine. There's a bit of the safety. And I did want to ask about what made you want to go into a podcasting, which is Let's Talk About It, which I know it has to do with dating. What sparked that idea with some of your friends as well?
Well, so Talk About It started. I was having a conversation with a friend about another friend of mine presenting some sort of, podcast or something like that. And like I said, I'm a shy extrovert. So I was like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to do that.
Yeah.
I love having conversations about different topics, right? But to be like recorded and then share that with everyone, was nerve wracking.
Yeah.
So when I talked to this friend, she's like, oh, that's such a great idea. Like, you know what? I was actually just thinking about that and praying about doing something like that. Like, why don't we join and do something? So then I was like, I don't know. Like, let me, pray about this.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I feel good about it. And so then we started that. And not only do we talk about dating, of course, that's a big topic because all four of us are single.
Yeah.
So we do talk about that. But just recently, we have a new episode that talks about anxiety. So we
Mhm.
talk about other topics as well. And we just thought, like, especially right now is a good time. I feel like a lot of people have that extra time to think about different things or think about things in a deeper way,
Yeah.
or more willing to watch or listen, to different podcasts. So we thought we could really use a biblical perspective as well. Of
Mm.
course, we have friends that, are of different religions or of none at all that also listen to it
Yeah.
too. But we, since all four of us are disciples, like we decided that we could hopefully, use this avenue in order to just talk about these topics and encourage other people to think about them, but also coming from a biblical perspective.
I like that. And what is the typical thought process that you come up with these topics or the episodes? I know
Sorry,
it's the
like
light.
the lights.
It happens.
um, Sorry, what was the question?
Oh yeah, well, what goes behind the thought process of coming up with these topics for each episode that comes out?
So, oh my gosh, sorry. Now it's connecting to the.
No worries. Anytime, I could always
It's
edit
connecting
this
to
out.
the Bluetooth. Ah, so honestly, it just depends, whatever's on our heart.
Mm,
Sometimes we think about the same thing, or it's, it's the same topic, but different questions depending on conversations that we've had with people, or something that we find that is really something that a lot of people are dealing with, like anxiety, like especially in 2020. Some people already dealt with anxiety, and then just all the uncertainties and all the changes and everything has made it even worse now. And then, of course, like sometimes we have friends recommend things like, hey, why don't you guys talk about this or that? So we take that into consideration as well.
wow, very cool. And it's great to see that you're very productive in a lot of areas, as well as you said, the baking, the podcasting. I know COVID-19 has been a crazy year for everybody. And I usually ask this question as we're wrapping up the podcast. What's
Mhm.
the biggest lesson you've learned? It could be in general of what COVID-19 has taught you this year.
Definitely to be grateful,
Mm,
because I feel like we can take for granted a lot of things, small things, like the fact that you can even walk around without a
yeah.
face mask alone. Like that's such a huge thing.
Exactly.
Um, for our jobs, for our family, our health, like so many different things, right? That we could take for granted. And
Mm,
I think like it shows you, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So
mm,
you have to make the most of today.
Mm.
And it like reminds me, in the Bible it says that, like tomorrow has enough worries of its own. And so we need to focus on today and be grateful for today and appreciate everything and everyone that we have in our lives today, because we don't know what tomorrow brings. So I've definitely learned that. I've learned to look at like the bigger picture too, because sometimes we can focus on such small things and just be like, wow, like there's just so much more.
Mm.
Or I'm just so incredibly blessed with so many different things.
Yeah.
So I definitely like wake up every morning now and I'm like, God, thank you so much just for another day of life, because
Mm.
I know there's a lot of people who are struggling to live. Fortunately, people who have passed away,
Mm.
people who are battling different things, or we just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So definitely being grateful and just making the most of today.
Mm, good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for joining us on the podcast. I think you share a lot of good information. And I'm hoping that you continue to bring out new sweets and stuff like that. Have a
Yeah.
sweet tooth for it. But thank you again,
Yeah.
Nancy, for just being on the podcast. Any shout outs you want to give before we wrap it up?
Uh, I mean, I didn't really think about it. I would probably say shout out to the other sisters that are on the podcast with
Mm.
me. So that's Sarah, Sophia, and Anna. And then shout out to all my supporters, in the baking business or also watching talk about it.
Amen. And that'll be wrapping it up for the podcast. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you again, Nancy, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.